We're sleuthing into 70s thrillers with a film starring Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland. The search for a missing married man leads to a call girl struggling with a stalker. It's a provocative film with a strong central character arc, so let's take a closer look at Klute. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I love inhibitions. They're so nice to get rid of.
This is a movie podcast, and we are working through. In fact, we're starting a new season today. We're starting 70s thriller season, and this will be a 7-episode season with a variety of thrillers from the 70s. This will by no means be comprehensive. There's definitely some big ones we're not doing, because frankly, there will be a season 2 someday of this theme, probably a season 3, because there's a lot of 70s thrillers that are worth doing. So we're going to kick things off today with a film called Klute, which I have never seen before, but it's been kind of like on my radar for probably about 10 years of knowing it existed and that I should probably watch it, but, you know, never quite got around to it till today.
Yeah, no, I feel like I've seen this in various like DVD collections and like posters of things from the 70s and such, and it's got a very recognizable, strangely enough, a recognizable font that anytime you see the word Klute, which is already itself a unique word, it's just always stuck in my mind. It's like, yeah, that's a movie from the 70s. I recognize it, but I don't know anything else about it.
Yeah, and I kind of like scheduled the movies more or less. Now, it might vary a little bit because there's a couple of Patreon vote episodes that will just be kind of roughly in the right place. But for the most part, we're going to go through this season with the movies in the order they came out, more or less. Okay. So this is 1971, so we're right at the start of the decade, and we've got Jane Fonda, and what I would call the lead role, even though she's not Klute, I would say she's the lead role. And then Donald Sutherland is Klute himself, and the male lead of the movie. And Roy Scheider also shows up as well in a supporting role, so he's obviously not a big name. But those are your 3 big names for the cast list. And the director here, Alan J. Pakula, did All the President's Men. He also did Sophie's Choice and a few other things. So, you know, a few big names in his filmography. But admittedly, I didn't necessarily recognize his name immediately. I'm like, obviously, yeah, All the President's Men is a really famous movie, but like, I couldn't have told you who directed it if you'd asked me. Right. 10 minutes ago. So, but hey, so was looking forward to getting to this. Jane Fonda plays a call girl named Bree, and there's kind of a mystery about a missing person, a missing man who's been gone for a while. And Klute is, I think he was a policeman, but he's become a private detective who's been hired to look into where this guy, and it's someone he knows personally as well. It's someone, you know, he was a friend of the family, and he is hired to look into this situation. And there's some letters that link the missing man to this call girl, and that's basically the start of the mystery. There's also a big part of the movie is a running theme of audio wiretaps and recordings and phone calls that have been recorded and things like that. That's a very recurring motif. I mean, the entire opening titles plays out as like you see the spinning tape spools, and we hear this conversation that was recorded in secret. So that's a recurring thing throughout the movie. But I'll leave it there. We'll get into obviously more plot spoilers and stuff when we actually get beyond the spoiler wall. Because as always, we'll start spoiler free. I didn't say that yet. We'll give you a warning before we get to the spoilers. And of course, if you're enjoying the show, do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch on YouTube. And you can get bonus content, bonus little bits for each review, and bonus shows over on Patreon or via YouTube membership. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, yeah, I mean, I did the premise. David, what did you think of Klute?
I think it's solid. I think it's a very well-made movie. I guess, I don't know, maybe I was just kind of like building it up in my own head. I because of how frequently I had seen it and how much I just associate it with like the 70s and all that, I don't know, I was kind of expecting it to be one of those like perennial, like this is the thing that defined these people's careers and stuff like that. And like you said, the director's not that notable of a name. I feel like I know Donald Sutherland for other things. I will say, though, I am not that familiar with Jane Fonda's work, but I feel like this is the one that really, like, got her into serious acting. I feel like this is the one that, like, I had nothing to back that up besides, like, the role she was cast in feels like They could have put in a no-name sort of actress. They put in Jane Fonda, and she kind of just really, really did a lot with it. I think this is kind of, like you said, she's the main character of this, but not because Donald Sutherland doesn't have anything to do. It's because all of the emotional work and all of the character stuff really does come from her, and she does a great job with it. On top of that, cinematography, very well done, very well thought out. If I have one major complaint in terms of what's going on, it's for being a thriller, I feel like the pacing and the structure kind of robs it of a lot of that by probably about the halfway point. Without spoiling anything, there's just some decisions that were made that kind of takes away a big aspect of the thriller for me. But I think by that point, we're so deep into the character work that I almost don't really mind it, to say the least. So I think it's still a good movie. I probably dancing on the border of great, but it's just beneath for me.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen Jane Fonda in at least one thing, because we did the China Syndrome on a disaster season, 70s disaster season, no less, way back when. So we've seen her.
But that was after this, correct?
Yes, that was like 78. That was, some years later. But and funnily enough, around this same time period on our sci-fi show, The Atomic Cinema Experiment, we'll be doing Barbarella, which was from the 60s. So we'll be seeing some of her earlier work. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that she won an Oscar for this role.
Oh,
so
makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's like, honestly, like it is a thriller. It is, it's got those elements. It's got a villain. It's got like the shadowy figure watching from the distance and all that stuff. But honestly, at its core, I would say this is a character study of a movie, and it's it's about this woman who's been a prostitute for a number of years, and kind of like going through like her views on that, her views on her life, like what she actually wants. Does she know what she wants and where she wants to go with her life? Like that's kind of what the heart of the movie is, beyond anything else. And I think the reason why it's called Klute, beyond just the fact that Klute's a more memorable name, I think if they called it Brie, it wouldn't sound as memorable. But it's because
a movie about cheese.
He's this kind of like different influence in her life. He's a very different person that she's just interacting with, and has a knock-on effect of how she starts to think about things. So he's so important to her story that it does make sense that it's called Klute, but he's not the main character. It's her story. And I think that's an important distinction here. And her performance is very good. It is it's an X-rated movie, obviously for the time. It talks about some raunchy things. I imagine it was pretty provocative for the subjects that it tackles and the way they talk about certain things and whatnot. Obviously, I'm not saying it feels super like extreme by today's standards by any means, but I think this was probably, a lot of people seeing this movie, it was probably the first time they heard certain things in a movie, right? Just some of the things they talk about with the sex stuff, or just some of the acts or fetishes that even come up in conversation are very kind of,
I do want to make clear, rated X in the UK. Over here, it did just get an R rating. It didn't
really?
Get the
Sorry.
NC-17 equivalent.
Sorry, IMDb just says X, so I assumed, I forget sometimes it translates to what the UK rating was, but okay, got an X rating in the UK, fair enough. The UK British film classification were noticeably a bunch of prudes until about 2000, and then all of a sudden we make the American classification system like a bunch of prudes. And all of a sudden R-rated movies were getting 12s here, whereas before films would have to be cut just to get an 18. It was really weird transition. I
think you guys probably could have managed like a 15 over there if it wasn't for that extended nunchuck scene. That probably bumped it up to the X.
Yes. Turtles was still on the tail end of that Margaret Thatcher, we have to protect all the children nonsense. Anyway, so no, I mean it's tackling all these subjects, but it's doing it from this perspective of it's a character who's in this world and has got all these viewpoints on this particular subject of sex and how she views that and how detached she is from it. So there's a really strong character study at the center here. I think the thriller elements are pretty decent, and I think there's a couple of fun moments from them and whatnot. But I would definitely say the character study element is the more impressive, better handled part of the movie. Like, it's definitely the strongest element, and I think it makes sense that she won an award, probably several awards for this role, because It does feel like that type of role where she gets to sink her teeth in. Like, honestly, like, obviously, the film I'm about to bring up's not a thriller in any way, but having seen Anora last year and really liking it, I see a lot of parallels of, like, hey, our main character's a prostitute, and it's all about kind of her coming to some terms. I mean, that's a younger character who's maybe... Arguably, it's kind of a coming-of-age movie. Not. I mean, she's not, like, a teenager, but she's, like, a coming-of-age in your 20s kind of movie. Right. Whereas this is a little bit different. This is... someone who's a little bit older than that and is kind of coming to terms with, like, the life she's built for herself, and is she falling into the same trappings? Is she, like, there's other characters in the film who, like, are addicted to drugs, and I think there's kind of definitely, like, a strong thing in this movie about her being an addict, just not to drugs. She's an addict of being a call girl in some ways, and that's, like, one of the things. There's like, several... therapy scenes where she kind of opens up about some of this stuff, and in some ways, like, I think some lesser movies, those might feel like crutch scenes where the character's just going to, like, talk about, like, the themes and, like, explain it to the audience, but she kind of gets into some really nitty-gritty stuff that feels like no, they're using this quite smartly to really kind of, like, embellish what this is about and, like, what she's going through. So I would say I like that. I would say it's a pretty damn good movie, but yeah, I don't know if it's quite hitting that all-timer, like, thriller status or anything like that, but it's definitely really, really solid.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate, especially with those therapy scenes, the fact that it could easily be used for the sake of, here's just a bunch of exposition about the character. But a lot of times the way it's used is in a contrast. You see what she's saying in the therapy scenes, but then the voice continues and overlaps with her doing something completely different than what she's saying. So you have to kind of come to terms with, like, was she lying then? Is she just covering up now? Like, how does this character work?
It's very smart, because, there's a contrast where it's like you're hearing her say one thing, but you're seeing her do the other. And, like, depending on what part of the movie you're at, you can read that very different ways. I think by the ending, it kind of, I think I feel very specifically about how it does it at the end, but, like, there's layers to it beyond she's just sitting saying certain things and we take them completely as granted. It's like she's a complex character, and the movie kind of plays with how it presents her as a complex character. And obviously there's themes in here, obviously, of obviously sex and that kind of thing, but more specifically her like her introductory scene in the film, she's at, like, an audition for, like, a beauty commercial or something like that. And it's just this row of women who are being judged, and the people who are talking about them are just openly saying, oh, she's got weird hands, or she's got weird eyes, in front of them. And there's kind of this, like, judgmental kind of quality to it. So, like, the movie kind of opens up in this lens. Yeah, we're following a prostitute who a lot of society looks down on and sees her as, like, the bottom of the ladder, if you will. But we're opening up in, like, this idea of a theme of, like, how she is being judged, and how... And in some ways, is that either informed or contrast with the life that she actually has and has chosen? And, there's at one point, there's, like, a big thing she talks about where, as a call girl, she feels that she has some control. She has some level of, like, manifesting her own destiny. And obviously there's dangers that come with that job of meeting dangerous people and so on. But for the most part, she feels like she's dictating things, like she's in charge. But going out and doing auditions and trying to make it as an actress or a model, all of a sudden other people are judging her and telling her she's not good enough, and that's a big, like, part of the character as well. So
I think one of the biggest pieces here is it's really a character study of someone who can't open up for whatever reasons. There's just this hesitancy to really open up and let anybody in, but then you get the counterpoint where, like, is this thing she wants to do, is it really opening up? Is it really just letting your, like, true emotion show? Or is it hiding even further behind a character? And so you get that sort of stuff of, like, whenever she's acting as a call girl, is this something where she's hiding behind a character and it's just like, no, I don't actually get anything out of this? Or is it something where it's one of the few times she feels she can open up because she's in control of things? So there's a lot of different ways to view it. And I think the movie does a good job of looking at it through these different lenses, and it does kind of land specifically on here's how this character views it, but it takes its time getting there.
Yeah, so it's very rich in that sense, and it is a slower paced film, and I imagine a lot of the movies we're going to do in this season are going to be a bit in the slower pace, because that's just, it's the 70s, they have a very different style to them in modern movies, which I find very refreshing, honestly, because it feels like I'm excited about this season, because I think we're going to get, like, if nothing else, they're all going to be interesting films, and they're all going to be making interesting choices with how they present their story. Will it always work for us? Maybe not, but I think I don't think we'll come out of any of these going, oh, that was bland and dull, and I've got nothing to say about it. I think they're all going to have some sort of opinions forming around them.
Yeah, here's open.
So, yeah. As far as anything else goes, the one thing I'd say about the music actually is that whenever it's doing like the thriller stuff and like, oh, someone's watching, it does this kind of like soft, like female vocal, kind of like almost lullaby, creepy kind of music, and it's very reminiscent of giallo films. There's definitely very, very similar tracks in some Dario Argento films, and that was what was really making me think of that. And part of me would say, oh, did Argento kind of take that from this? But some of those Argento movies are like around the same time or even slightly predate this, so I don't think that is the case. If anything, maybe this is taking inspiration from giallo films. So
yeah, possible. I read a bit here in the trivia that is saying the second film score for the composer Michael Small. So this is only the second film time he ever showed up, and the director basically just took a big risk on, I'm want to make this a big time movie. It's going to be for Oscars and stuff like that. So I think he did a good job with it. There was no point in here where I felt that the music was contradicting the sort of vibe that was going on. It always felt like it was adding to it at the very least.
Yeah. And I think that sort of like vocal creepy part is definitely the most that's in your face. Like I feel like a lot of the movie, it's very subdued. It's very, going unnoticed and just kind of adding a little bit of texture to what's going on, as opposed to like, oh, this is going to be really dictating the moods and the upswings and all the rest of it. It kind of lets the direction and the acting do a lot of the heavy lifting, I would say. Which I don't think's incorrect for such a kind of like intimate character study of a film. And I think, it's not a superhero movie. You don't need blasting main themes that are playing at heroic moments or anything like that. So
you're saying Klute doesn't bust in and you just hear the trombones and the trumpets blaring out?
Surely Klute's main theme should be a flute.
I mean, yes, sure, rhyming. Why not?
A little flute, a little flutter on the flute. Just, here comes old Donnie Sutherland.
I've seen stuff with Donald Sutherland in his younger days, but I feel like this is like one of the youngest I've ever seen him.
That might just be because he doesn't have the facial hair. I think they're not having the facial hair is really... I mean, he is young here, obviously, compared to a lot of stuff, because this is the 70s. But, like, I'm so used to him with the beard or a mustache. Even when I think of, like, Don't Look Now, which is only a couple of years after this, like, he's got facial hair in that, so he looks significantly older compared to this just because of that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what age he was at this point, but he's probably at least in his 30s, if not hitting 40 already.
1935, so about 36.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Sounds right. Do you think he looks my age in this movie?
It's so hard to say that, because that's the sort of thing where I was watching some movie. I can't remember what it was. It was a few weeks back, but it came out in the 60s, and there was a character in there who's like, "Yeah, I'm 23 years old," and I'm like, "You look 40." Like just because of the styles and the haircuts and everything else, you look 40.
It's not just that. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but people were smoking everywhere back then. Right. People were drinking less water, moisturizer wasn't, like, there's a lot of reasons why people just looked older much quicker, like before, I don't know, our generation, basically.
That's fair. But to answer your question, Pete, I think you look more youthful than Donald Sutherland did in Klute.
I mean, I wasn't that concerned about it or looking for to be propped up, but I appreciate it all the same.
Yes.
So, no, I mean... I'm just trying to think of if there's anything else that I want to discuss before we get into it. I mean, you mentioned the cinematography briefly. I will add on, there's kind of a couple of interesting moments where, particularly when there's like supposed to be a little bit of tension and it's like someone's watching or whatever, where they make some choices. There's like, there's like a sort of shot through a skylight at one point, and it kind of, even though it's not still through the skylight, there's kind of this choice to keep a high angle looking down for like the rest of the scene that kind of gives it this vibe. It really feels like an intentional choice. There's another scene at one point where I won't give the context of this, but Brie goes into like a sort of club of some kind, and it's basically a oneer where it's just kind of like her walking towards the camera and doing different things in the club, and it edits and cuts to a character that's there that means something. It means something. She's came here where this character is, and it's all this oneer, and then the first time it cuts to this other person's face, and it feels like it has impact because of those cinematography and editing choices. So there's a lot of craft going on here, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, there's one recurring location in this that they go up to via elevator, and they specifically do a sky shot looking down into the open roof of this elevator. And I just appreciate the cinematography there because it adds to the character where, depending on how the character is in the elevator, it tells you a lot about the mental state, where like if they're pacing around or if they're moving frantically, they're much more nervous. And then when we get one character who is a bit more menacing in the movie, it's just totally still, like no movement whatsoever, and it really adds to it.
Yeah, and Bree's apartment's kind of a big location in the movie. We kind of go back there a lot. I'd say like at least half the movie's probably set in that apartment, and it, like they do different things with the skylight and stuff like I mentioned. So yeah, and it feels like grungy 70s New York, and I do like that vibe. It's a good vibe for a movie. So yeah, all right, well I think we're probably ready to start getting into the movie and the spoiler stuff. So we'll say spoiler warning from this point on for Klute. You have been warned, and we'll get into things. So
jumping in before even the movie begins, can I just say the Warner Brothers logo on this I had never seen before. It is a red shield, and it's like a different shape and everything else. I looked it up. Apparently this was only used for 1970 to 1972. So very brief period there.
I think you have seen it before, because I want to say this was also at the start of Dirty Harry.
Oh, well, that was over 120 episodes ago, Pete, so I may have just forgotten.
Because when I saw it, I'm like, oh, I've seen that before from this time period. And that's such a specific window. And Dirty Harry was 71, so there's a really good chance that it's the same shield. Because actually before this, it was that weird one where it's like the one at the start of Superman is like, it's not, I meant they replaced it at some point, but like it's like almost just three like slanted lines in like a box to make a W. That's what they had before the Warner Brothers. I think it was just maybe the Warner company at that point. But,
no, are you talking about like the rounded lines?
Yes.
And then like that's 72 to 1990.
Oh, that makes sense.
Actually came after this.
Yeah, because Superman was after. That's right. I'm thinking this is the start of these.
Yeah.
So
beforehand, they did have another weird one for like 3 years. That's just a W with like the W then extends over the top of the W as well. Like the line extends halfway over. But yeah, they just cycled through a few, and then they settled on that one used for Superman for like 2 decades.
No, because they switched to the they didn't have like an animation, it was a static image, but they switched to like what we think of as the Warner Brothers shield with the sky behind it. Certainly by the time of the Lethal Weapon, which was 87, maybe even a bit earlier. But somewhere in the mid 80s is when they switched to that, and then that just became like, I mean, obviously they've touched it up in small ways since, but that's been the shield since then.
Yeah, I'm seeing here it's written down that it was replaced in the mid 80s, but wasn't officially given the new one until 93.
All right, weird. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. All right. Okay, that was a weird tangent about the Warner Brothers logo, but I'm all for it.
I didn't expect it to go that deep. I just was like, yeah, it's a weird logo.
Hey, I like talking about the movie intros. It's fun to see how they've evolved over the decades and which ones I long to go back to, because I preferred ones from certain time periods.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the movie opens with like this really just kind of like abrupt scene at a dinner party where like Klute's there, Donald Sutherland is there, and there's like a married couple at either end of the table who are running this dinner party, and they're having a good time, they're drinking, everything seems to be happy, and there's basically just like a smash cut to like an alternate meeting sometime later where like police detectives are explaining to Klute and the wife that the husband's missing and they can't find him. And they ask her a bunch of questions like, hey, was he having an extramarital affair? Was there problems? But, all the sort of things you'd expect them to ask. And they eventually bring up that they found letters inside his desk at work, which are very obscene, that were being sent to this woman that lives in New York. And they all kind of react very coldly to it. And then that kind of, like, again, sort of coldly just, like, hard cuts into the opening titles, which play out as a recording. Like, we see a hand come in, press play on the recording, this old school tape recorder with the spools of tape. And it's a conversation between Bree, a character we've not met yet, and the John. And her sort of like saying, hey, like, you have to be nervous, and talking about, and we hear this tape like maybe like 5 times throughout the course of the movie. Like, it keeps coming back up. It's a recurring thing.
It's specifically just her voice. It's obviously a conversation, but it's like only her side is coming through.
Yeah, and she's making this guy feel comfortable, and even like throws in at one point, it's okay if you want to hit me, as long as you don't hurt me more than I agree to, or she says that at one point. She says, hey, let loose. And she's sort of like going through the as we kind of find out, the motions of what she does when she meets a John, which is they're usually nervous. She usually stays calm and talks them through it, tries to sort of lead them to whatever direction they want to go in. And it's like, okay, we don't really have context for this yet, but this is a very engaging opening title sequence because it is an interesting thing to listen to for the first time, because you don't know who she's talking to. It sets up this idea, okay, we're going to be like looking at a prostitute, we're going to be like dealing with this type of life and this type of character, and it just sort of draws you in a little bit and makes you wonder, okay, who's she talking to? But there's definitely an air of creepiness because, it's a tape recording that she probably doesn't know was recorded. This seems secretive, whether this is like a police tap, and it isn't, but like it could be that at this point in the movie, we don't know. But it feels like, there's something more to this, and it kind of draws you into, like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah, I think this movie, again, is pretty typical for thrillers, but I think this movie does a good job of getting you to understand what the mystery is here very quickly, very, like, easily, but it barely gives you any details. And then we just slowly, over the course of the movie, get those details fleshed out, so that way we further understand, okay, what's the whole, let's try to solve this mystery with the other characters and figure out what's going on in the larger scheme.
Yeah, and obviously at this point, like, I think the most obvious assumption from the audience is that, she's talking to the missing husband. Was this when the husband went to see her? Like, that's maybe the obvious thing you could maybe jump to. It's not. We find out later it's definitely not that, but like, that's like an obvious thing you could think at this point.
Yeah,
but
I will say I like the next scene where it's the actress, like everyone's looking for I think it's cosmetic ad or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just the Rosa woman. I like how, because of the way it's shot, like we kind of implicitly as the audience, because the previous thing was the voice recording, know that one of these women is our lead, like is the one we're doing it. But if you didn't know what Jane Fonda looked like, if you had no idea, like going into it, that's the person. This is essentially just it could be anyone. It could be any one of them at this point.
And to be honest, it took me a second even then, because like her hair in this is so different to like what I'm used to seeing her hair from in this, time period. Because like her hair in like Barbarella, which I've not seen yet, but just from the poster, it's not that dissimilar to her hair in China Syndrome. It's kind of similar style. She's got like kind of the beehive kind of, well, no, not a hive. She's not got it's not tall, but she's got kind of I don't know,
it's
hair
a short
cuts.
Cut. It's not. Yeah. It's a short, not quite a bob, but it's down around the shoulders. She got some heavy bangs going on.
Yeah, it feels like it's hugging her face a little bit. Is how I'd describe it, right?
Yeah,
hugging her face. Honestly, there's a scene later on where she goes to one of her Johns, and she's wearing like a dress, but it's kind of tight at the top. And I was like, the top half almost like a cat suit. At least when it was in silhouette, it looked like she was wearing a cat suit, but the bottom half was a skirt. And I'm like, I'm sure fashion people have an exact name for this type of dress, but I have no idea what it is. No idea.
It's probably something as esoteric as like drink names. It's like, oh yeah, that's the Schlangendarger. Came from Sweden. Whatever.
I don't know. I don't think there's supposed to be a schlanging in there, but I mean, who knows?
That's what the Darger part's for.
So yeah, you get that scene where she's just being judged along this line of women, and these two people who are mostly off camera. Again, the camera work is very intentional here, where the shot is low at the eye level of the women who are all sitting in the chairs, and it just kind of stays there tracking. There's a wide shot at the start and the end of the scene, but most of the scene is just this tracking shot going across as they're talking about them. So the two people who are talking are up out of frame. Like we see like their asses and their backs, but their heads are up out of frame, and we just see the reaction of the women who are being discussed. And like we see them say, "Hey, smile for us." Hey, like, "Oh, your eyes look nice," or "Your eyes look weird," and there's just all these little judgy comments, but it's not even like they're being intentionally mean. This is just so cold and like, no, this is our job. We're not treating them like human beings. We are just looking at the livestock and like deciding what the choices are.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that it's a cattle call. It's literally just get as many as humanly possible in here, and we're just going to rush through it. If any of them are close, we might give them a second look. But for the most part, it's going to be gut reactions of like, I don't like your skin tone. I don't like your hair. Your hands are a bit weird. And it's just immediately out the door.
Yep. So it's a little bit, deflating and demoralizing. And, and meanwhile, we've jumped ahead in time again. We find out like the husband's been missing for 6 months. The police/feds have basically given up and said, hey, this is a dead end. We can't do anything. And that's when we find out the company the husband worked for is going to pay for Klute as a private detective to go to New York, because this is all based in Pennsylvania, and he's never been to the big city before, so that's kind of like a fish out of water thing. Kind of like you, David. You're a little like small town Pennsylvania boy.
Excuse me, I lived in like the outskirts of Baltimore for a year or two, so whatever. But yeah, fine.
Okay, you lived in New York after the post-apocalypse has happened. Congratulations.
Yeah. Which makes me entirely able to deal with normal New York.
Makes you tough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. That joke's only because I've seen The Wire, so my only frame of reference for Baltimore is like all the drug gangs and stuff.
I'm just going to conveniently leave out that I lived in a gated community outside of Baltimore, but whatever.
So we see this conversation take place, and there's a character named Peter Cable who's like the head of the company, or maybe he was working like alongside or underneath like the guy who's missing, but he's kind of in charge now, and he's like, no, we're going to pay Klute to look into this. And Klute, while he has a background, because he was wearing some kind of uniform in like a previous scene, like some kind of police looking uniform, he's never worked a missing persons case before. He's never done that kind of thing, but he does ask some questions of like, hey, you looked into this girl, right, who was getting the letters. What did you get from her? So we find out that, yeah, they did question her. They even arrested her for her job, and like she did a little bit of time but got out because she gave them everything she knew, made a deal, and she's back out in the street, or I say street, she's not like living on the street, she's got an apartment, but like, she's back out in the world. So we actually don't see him for a little bit until he shows up again at her place.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time with her, getting to know her routine and the nuances, because I think at first when we see her go to like this guy's like hotel room, and it's it's a John, and she kind of like makes him feel a bit more comfortable and discusses payment, and the scene kind of like goes down. It feels like she's being very genuine with them, but there's that moment when they're having sex where she just kind of casually looks at her watch like, all right, he's almost up, better get to it.
I was honestly amazed at this section though, like going forward as well, but there's a good like 20-minute block here where we don't even see Klute. We don't cut back to that story at all. And up to this point, it's been back and forth. But the fact that the title character does not come back into the story now until 20 minutes in, it really does establish in your audience, no, Bree's the main character.
Yeah.
Klute is just the inciting incident in her life.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you see this and you think, oh, she's a call girl, she's still doing this, whatever. But then you get one of her therapy sessions quite soon after this, and we find out a couple of things here. One, that she's not actually full-time call girl anymore. Like this, before she was arrested, a couple of years ago, she was actively a call girl, and she doesn't say this herself. I think it's the policeman when they're talking to Klute says, oh, a good call girl in New York will have like 600 Johns a year. And, so we don't know for sure if that's how many she would have, but the idea being that she was a full-time call girl, so she was actively doing it every day. This was like a full-time gig. And now she's kind of like doing it part-time. Like she's trying to get acting jobs. She's going to like theater training. She's going for these modeling gigs or whatever they are, but she's still doing this on the side. She gets these phone calls. She goes to these apartments or hotel rooms, and she still does it. And, like, forgive me, because like a lot of these like therapy sessions are going to blur together in my mind, but like, one of the big things that she gets into in talking about like why she still does it, she talks about like she kind of wants to quit it, but she wants to leave that world behind, but she can't help it. Like she wants to answer the phone, she wants to go and do this because, and it's kind of what we were getting at earlier before we got any spoilers there. She feels in control. She has some kind of power in that situation as the one who's not nervous, as the one who's dictating terms, as the one who's doing all it. She feels like some level of power in a way that she doesn't in the rest of the world when she's trying to make it.
Yeah, and I really like the way her character fleshes that out, because you can sense from the way Fonda plays it that she truly does not want to be a part of that anymore. She wants to be able to leave it behind, but it is essentially the same as a drug addiction for her, where it's something where she gets a high out of doing this, not because of the sex, not because it's like actual physical pleasure. It is that level of, I don't have control over any other aspect of my life. Nothing else has worked out the way I wanted to, but I can use sex to control these guys into doing things that I want them to do. And it's that level of control that's essentially the aphrodisiac for her that just really gets it. So whenever, like again, I think that the first time we see her call a John, it's implied that she's making that call right after the cosmetic ad. Like she walks out of that and it didn't work out for her, and she's like,
she needs to feel the power again, because she feels like, maybe not humiliated, but she feels like she just felt weak because she wasn't able to get anywhere there.
Plus, someone literally just pointed out her flaws as well. Yeah. It's just like, no, not quite what we're looking for. And she's like, no, I know a guy who's exactly what I'm looking for.
But it's interesting, though, because a couple of things that come up is she says that, because I think there's a great dichotomy of, again, what I was saying earlier, of like how most people, or a large part of like, the world view prostitutes and sex work is this thing that's demeaning, that's low in the ladder, and that is something to be spat upon and looked down upon. And she flat out says, like, I don't feel morally or ethically, like, I don't have a problem with what I do in that sense. But she doesn't get any pleasure out of it, not sexually, not physically. She doesn't get anything out of it in that sense. And it sounds like it's kind of also, it sounds like sex itself is something that she never enjoys because it's only this thing she does with Johns, with for a job, Yeah. It kind of sounds like that.
I mean, it's a much later scene, but she makes the implication of like, I don't ever get anything out of it with the Johns, but there's kind of this hanging implication that if there was actually someone who she was romantically entangled with, someone who she did let in, then that would be different.
Yeah, and that's something that explodes later once, a relationship kind of starts to form down the line. But I think that part's really interesting to me, just in that kind of split, this idea that she seeks power in the thing that the rest of the world thinks she's weak for. I think there's a really interesting dynamic to that specifically. But the other thing that she mentions specifically as well is that, and this is kind of her admitting that it's not actually that good. Like, it's like, okay, it makes her feel powerful, but it's kind of hollow in some ways, because she's also aware that for most of the men she sees, they don't specifically want her. They just want a woman who's willing to do the things, right? That's it. They don't care. I mean, she says, like, there's a few regulars who specifically want to keep coming back to me, and that feels a bit nicer. But most of the time, it's just someone who want a willing participant, and that's it.
Right.
And that doesn't feel very good, because it's not specifically because of her. And that maybe ties into the insecurity of being disregarded at the, the modeling auditions and agencies and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do also like the counterpoint to that, which is there are a couple of regulars she has, and I think we get to see one of them in this little opening montage area where it's this older guy. I think they said later on that he's in his 70s, and he doesn't do anything with her. He doesn't lay a hand on her or anything like that. She kind of just poses erotically, maybe strips a little bit, and he just basically enjoys the company of her more than anything else.
And it seems like specifically he enjoys hearing an erotic story, because the whole thing is that she's like sort of describing, I just got back from Canada, which I don't even think is true. I think she's just making up a story where she had a sexual encounter and she tells this guy about it and he just listens. But what I really like about this, and I'll just sort of use this bit from near the end to cap this little like two-part thing off, is that later on in the film, when she feels like she's got nowhere to go, she tries to go to this old guy, potentially just for a place to go to feel safer, and the old guy's not there. and he's left like a message for her, and all it's in the message, there's nothing like written down, there's no words, there's no like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm gone or anything. There's just some cash, and it kind of reiterates this idea that that's all this was between them, even though like she all she had to turn to was someone who just considered her as someone that he paid for a service, and that's all it is. Like that's all it's waiting for when she goes to him for some kind of comfort is, here's some money because that's all you get from me. Because there's a little debate after she goes to see the old guy, because Dollar Sutherland's around at that point and sees some of that play out, and he says, what about that old guy you went to see tonight? And that's when she explains, oh, he never touches me, blah blah blah. But she specifically says, you know, I'm all he has, and like, I give him some comfort. What's the harm in that? But I think at the end, when you see her get that envelope and all it's in it's money, and that's all he has to offer her, you're like, well, it seems like there is a little bit of harm, because you thought this was someone that cared about you, at least a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I get what you're saying there, and I agree, but I think that it's a little bit different than that, in that I think the old guy was incapable of seeing, like, he kind of knew that this was the game. He was aware of like, yeah, you're just here for my money, and like, I accept that, I understand that. And so when it came back where she actually did kind of view him as a legitimate friend, or at least someone that she could go to in a time of trouble, he didn't understand that that was what was needed. And so he was just like, yeah, you need money? All right, here you go, money. And she's like, no, I needed more than that this time around. And it's kind of that idea that barrier was always going to be there, because you can't really break that.
I don't think anything you said there contradicts what I said. I mean, whatever the old guy's reasons for, like, leaving the money, almost doesn't matter. The point is that she goes for help, and all that's left for her is money, because that's all that was expected. Yeah,
I just wanted to point out, like, I don't think the old guy's being malicious. I don't think that he, like, understood what the situation was calling for.
I don't think it's important, though, if he's being malicious or not, because I think the point is that he's not there for her in the way that she kind of needs someone to be there. Because a big part of this movie, of course, is that she's getting close to Klute. She talks at her therapy repeatedly about how, this is kind of a healthy thing, and that, he cares about me. He's seen me be ugly. He's seen me be, sad and at my worst, and he still cares and wants to take care of me, still wants to make love to me, blah, 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 blah. And I keep trying to ruin it. For some reason, I know that's a good thing, and yet every fiber of my being wants to ruin it. And again, it sounds like a drug addict who's trying to push away like positive, forces like in their life that are trying to help them, kind of thing, Yeah,
it's that sort of thing where you can tell she's had a history of being let down. And so it's much easier to just not let in the good stuff to begin with, because when you let in the good stuff and it's taken away, it hurts a hell of a lot more than when it's not there to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. So we see
just one other thing from this montage sequence. It's kind of mentioned during the initial part where Klute takes on the case, but during this montage sequence, we see that she is getting late night phone calls and calls throughout that are just breathing, no other noise on the other end, and it's implied she has a stalker, and that the stalker is the one who, at this point, is the guy that Klute is looking for, is the implication.
It could be the missing husband. That's like, maybe he is the creepy stalker, maybe he has a dark side we didn't know about, maybe it's him. Like, that's like the... And I do think it's important to mention that moment as well, because she does look genuinely terrible. Like, she comes across as very capable, very strong, but then when that phone call happens, she's lying there alone in bed, she sort of like looks terrified. Like, the camera just pulls back and it shows you how alone she is, and she doesn't have anyone to help her. Like, it really emphasizes, like, she can put up this tough front the whole day. She can like come across as this badass who knows what she wants and is very capable and then sticks to her guns, but ultimately she still has these moments of vulnerability. So again, it's a very layered character that gives you all those. And sure enough, when Donald Sullivan, Klute first shows up, she doesn't let him in. In fact, he does a whole thing where he very just dryly says, I'm a private investigator, I'm looking for this man, and she puts on an accent, like a southern accent, and then when he thinks that he's maybe convinced her to I just want to talk to you, I'm not trying to get into trouble, I just want to answer some questions, she shuts the door, and the implication in most movies is that when that happens, it's because she's taken the little chain off the latch. Instead, she just locks the door, and he's left standing there, and that's how the scene ends.
I love that moment. She just reiterates everything he said. So you're a private investigator. You just want to ask questions about this guy. You want nothing more than that. And he's like, yep, yep, yep. She's like, cool. Slam.
Speaking of her accents, later on we see her like practicing or rehearsing something at like a little theater group or whatever it is. And she is doing an accent which I think was supposed to be Irish, but every so often it was slipping into Scottish, and I'm like, Jane, what are you doing here? I mean, okay, like maybe she's doing a great job and it's the character's meant to be bad at it, and that's fine, but I'm like, what are you doing here?
I feel like you could have played it either way, but then when she's told to stop by, because I assumably it's an audition, when she's told to stop by the director or whoever, he's like, well, the accent was interesting. Like you could tell that he's like, yeah, that wasn't good. Don't do that.
Oh dear. Again, she wants to put up this front. She wants to put up a mask, and an accent's another way to shield herself from reality, kind of thing.
Yeah, especially because the scene itself was a very like heartfelt scene. It was like really opening up about this character's history. So you gotta put that distance in between there.
Yeah. So, you know, Klute kind of follows her. We find out quite quickly that he is listening to her phone conversations. He's basically renting an apartment at the bottom of her building, this little basement apartment that's like tiny. And he's following her around, sees her with the old man as a customer, just kind of like keeps an eye on what she's doing during the day, and tries to, when she comes home after the old guy, he's sort of waiting and says, hey, can I ask you some questions now? And she gets kind of pissed, but ultimately, like, she's like, okay, fine, you want to know about this guy. Well,
yeah, she looks into the apartment and sees the murder board with like the red string and all that is like implicating her with this old man, and clearly the tape recording software. And she's like, you son of a bitch, you got blackmail on me. All right, fine, come on.
Yeah, she assumes blackmail, and I don't think it's ever his intention to actually blackmail. I think he was just literally gaining intelligence. But you know, he goes up to her place, and she kind of like, you know, pivots between like, you know, I'm pissed at you, I don't know anything, to being a little bit flirty, and even kind of suggesting almost as like a deal to get the tapes off him, like, hey, we could have a party tonight. And he's very stoic. He's like not reacting to any of this. He's like keeping it in his pants. He's not even tempted a little bit. And this is actually the scene where at one point during the middle of the scene where she's really trying to like tempt him, because she's like sort of starting to take off her dress and kind of like being, oh, you don't want me to undress in front of you, where he like realizes he hears something, and he's like, someone's on the roof, and he kind of grabs her arms and like walks her over to like away from the skylight, and the entire time the camera shot stays like this high angle looking down at them, and he's like, there's someone upstairs, and he pulls out a gun, but it's all done in this very kind of like intimate, like we're like almost like we're spying on them, like the person who's watching them kind of way.
Yeah, I really like that sequence because, like you said, she's being flirty. She's trying to get him to break. And then you say, like, someone's on the roof, but, like, he just looks around for a second and then grabs her and starts moving her towards the bed. And she's like, ha, I knew it. I knew you would break. No big deal. And then he leans down and is like, someone's on the roof. Don't freak out. Stay here. I'm going to go deal with it. And you can see her immediately become shaken, and she's not trying anything anymore. She's like, yes, please help. I need that.
Yeah, we get a creepy scene of him, like, you know, going up to the roof with the torch and looking around and almost getting a glimpse of the guy who's, like, watching or, you know, in the distance, but not getting a good enough look at him to actually see who it is. And it's actually kind of clear who it is to the audience, and the movie reveals it pretty outright, like, and almost like the next scene or two, where it just cuts to him, and it's Peter Cable, the guy who is running the company, and he's sitting in his like boardroom chair listening to the same tape from the opening titles, and he's got sweat dripping down his head like he's turned on, or he's like, you know, whatever he's getting from this.
I was a little bit disappointed at that, because it does happen about, you know, it's almost 2-hour long movie, and I think that happens just before the 45-minute mark. And I think that there would have been a way that you could have had him listening to this tape and have the audience be at least a little bit thinking, okay, is he doing this because he cares about trying to find the guy, and this tape is like the only hint they have, or something like that? Or like, how did he come into possession of this tape at the very least? But because of his reaction, it is 100% evident, like, oh, okay, he's the bad guy. And so the mystery aspect is now gone, and it's all about the suspense and thriller of how are we going to prove that he's the bad guy.
Yeah, and whether or not he's going to like get to her, because he seems dangerous, and obviously there's other victims that happen throughout the course of the story, and the implication is that we ultimately find out that he killed the missing guy. He killed two other one already, and then another one during the course of the film, and then ultimately he's going after Bree by the end. So he is very dangerous. I guess at that point I just kind of accepted that, okay, we're not treating this as a whodunit. We're telling the audience pretty upfront, not right at the start, but pretty early on, and it adds this layer of like, wait, this is a guy who knows him. This is the guy who hired Klute to look into this, and all of a sudden the idea that he hired someone who had no experience in missing persons makes a lot of sense. He at the start of the movie he's like, oh no, we hired Klute because he cares, he's passionate, but no, he hired Klute because he thought, oh, he won't get the job done, he won't get close to me, he's shit.
At the very least, maybe he did think Klute was like good at his job or whatever, but he thought, well, I'm his boss, so if it ever looks like he's getting close, I could just say, all right, funding dried up, let's get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I think he's a decent villain. Like, I think there's a nice creepiness to him listening to the tapes. But I think the most effective stuff with the creepier tension stuff is more the kind of like the stalkery, like camera behind the fence with the hand as he's watching, or much later in the film, like, we don't see any of this, but they get back to her place and like it's been broken into and everything's trashed, and like they say it explicitly like a couple of scenes later, but she picks up a pair of her panties and goes, "Oh my god!" and it didn't say what it is, and I'm like, well, what did he do with the panties? And I was sort of thinking, I was like, well, one thing might be springing to mind, but I don't know if that's what they're implying. And then they explicitly say it like two scenes later.
Sort of thing where there's quite a leap there, and you're like, well, if they don't specifically say it, then no big deal. But the way she's holding it on with like the end of her two fingers, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's probably what it is.
Yeah. Yes. He used her panties to masturbate, everyone, just in case anyone didn't get it.
Congratulations. So no, the one bit that I want to get out of when she's telling her story to Klute and like being all flirty and all that, the only thing that we kind of get, because there is, as much as we, the audience, knows who done it, there is still the solving the mystery aspect from Klute's side of things, and we get to see the slow reveal of clues. And the one bit that really springs things forward here is that she remembers that around the time where theoretically she would have seen this guy, there was a guy that she saw that beat her up pretty badly, and she doesn't remember if it's the same guy, but she does remember that I think it was Pimp at the time, was the one who set up that meeting. So that's the next stop we have to go on. That's
the lead, and he says, you're going to take me to see him tomorrow. And this like gets us down this like investigation path, which I don't think we'll go through beat for beat, because there's like, maybe a lot of it, but just to sum up kind of like where it goes. So Roy Scheider's like the ex-pimp, and he is a bit smarmy when they go to see him and whatever. I think they do a lot with him later on, where I feel like just his presence like implies so much about her choices, and it's really effective. His first scene, I think, is it's solid enough.
He's literally the physical representation of all the bad choices in her past.
Yeah.
So anytime that he shows back up again, it's this idea that she continues to flirt with that, going and backsliding down to the previous life she had.
So yeah, basically Klute talks to him, and he sort of says, hey, I put her on the job, but it wasn't really me. She had kind of like a rivalry with these two other prostitutes. One really didn't like her, and she intentionally picked this guy for knowing that he was violent. And I was like, okay, that's pretty vicious, all right. So he's like, hey, can I talk to her? And he's like, well, sorry, no, she's dead. She committed suicide. He's like, oh, geez. All right, well, what about the other girl, who the third one who was kind of involved? Is like, well, yeah, I don't know where she is. She's a junkie. Like, she dropped out. So I don't know where she is. So there's a bit of like a string of investigating of trying to find her. And Bree is dragged around as he's like talking to these different people, and there's like a sort of like brothel with like a madam mistress type character who's like, hey, Bree, anytime you want to come back, you'll always have a home with us. And it's like this constant. It's almost like Klute's dragging her right now through like all of her past, and it feels like this horrible reminder of everything. But after they have this meeting, and I think maybe it's after they go and see the junkie girl, who they finally find, and she doesn't really. She does say that the photograph's not the guy that beat anyone up. The guy that beat someone up was a bit older, and we at this point we know who it is, so we know who she's describing. But they're clearly like, her and her boyfriend are still extreme addicts, and they're freaking out because their drug dealer's coming by, and if anyone else is here, he will just run away. He'll think it's a sting operation or something.
I love that shot because it's like Klute could be standing literally anywhere else in this apartment and it wouldn't have been a problem. But instead you have the guy who's definitely a cop standing right as the door opens, like right there. Clearly not forward thinking.
So yeah, they run away and like they don't get much, and it's just this kind of sad scene where the junkie girl and her boyfriend come back in looking sad, and they just sort of like, he lies down, she starts putting like, you know, a damp cloth on his head,
like withdrawal stuff.
Yeah, they're both just miserable because they're both completely like addicted and have no drugs. So it's a really interesting scene because this is actually what kind of leads her to, I wouldn't say relapsing, but it's like she makes some choices after this that kind of go a little bit AWOL, where it's almost like she needs to go and like feel the power again, or go and feel something again.
Yeah, so I feel like up until that point, it's kind of been like a scared straight sort of thing, where we're seeing her come to terms with like, yeah, that was my past, whatever. But it is, like you said, people are saying you'll always have a home at the brothel. People are trying to welcome her back into the fold, saying that she can come in. It's at that point where she sees what would happen theoretically if she were to stay in this life. Like, this is the long term of like, eventually you're going to get hooked on drugs. Eventually this is all going to go down south. And that's what scares her to the point where you would think that would make her say, oh, I'm out, I don't want to do anything more with it. But because it is so familiar and so comfortable, she goes to a dance club that we saw earlier, meets back up with the pimp character, and basically just falls into one bad night. But
I want to really like emphasize like how that scene plays out, because she runs out of the car away from Klute, runs like, you know, up to this the train or whatever it is, gets to this club, and it's all a wonder where she walks in and she just sort of like tries to dance and flirt with one guy near the door. She kind of like decides that she doesn't want to deal with him. She walks forward and just ends up like making out with this guy that's a stranger, like on a couch. And then she sort of like takes him up to the dance floor but leaves him behind and keeps walking forward. And all this is like one shot. It's all one take, just showing her go through this club. And it's when she stops and just looks over at, you know, who she's looking at, where the camera finally cuts to Roy Scheider's face. And he's sitting there like he's the boss of the room, like he's the crime boss, or whatever you want to call it. And she goes over to him and just sort of like leans into him like she wants protection, like, oh, he'll keep me safe, right? It's almost like this interesting kind of like tug of war between accepting that Klute is like maybe this new positive force that might help keep her safe, and like, you know, receding into like who was there before. Because we skipped over.
Yeah, I was going to go back to that.
Yeah, because Klute had a whole bit where he actually kind of said, hey, you've done your job, like you've helped me find whatever you're going to help me with, and he gives her the tapes, and they have a little bit of an exchange where she's like, hey, did us city folk like, you know, make you see some of the magic? And he's like, that's pathetic. And she just like says, F you, and storms off. But then he goes to her at her little audition thing and says, hey, I need to find this junkie girl, help me. So there's that played out. We kind of skipped over that.
Well, that also, somewhere in between there, when they're looking for the junkie girl, they go down to the city morgue and look through pictures of dead Jane Does, and it really gets to her. It really does shake her. She doesn't see her friend, obviously, because she meets up later, but it shakes her. And then the immediately following scene to that is, I guess she can't sleep that night. She comes down to Klute's apartment, his place where he's staying, and they do end up having sex.
Yeah, she comes down and she's kind of like, you know, cold and like scared, and you know, he kind of like doesn't invite her in right away. He's kind of like almost like not awestruck, but like he's like, he doesn't know how to proceed. He's standing there in his pajamas, and
he's like, are you just playing me, or is this like legitimate? Like, are we doing this?
And eventually, you know, she says, can you let me in? He's like, yeah. And she's like, I don't want to be alone. And he even offers like, hey, if you want to go back up to yours, like, you know, I'll you know, sit in your couch or whatever. Like, you know, she's like, no, I don't want to be up there. I feel like someone's watching me. And he offers his bed, and he's got like a little pull-out mattress. It's like this like thin mat. I was like, oh, that looks so uncomfortable, but it's like a little thin mattress. Yeah. He pulls this little mattress out, and he lies down next, and he says good night, and she says good night, and she says thank you. So it's kind of a sweet moment. And then we cut to kind of somewhere in the middle of the night, where she's lying there looking down at him, and he's asleep, and she sort of slinks down to the mattress, and we see that she's only wearing like a shirt. She's got no like underwear on underneath. Like we sort of see it from the side, and she starts kind of like, you know, caressing him from behind, kissing his neck, whatever. And at some point, obviously, he kind of wakes up and like reciprocates the kissing, and yeah, like it cuts ahead a little bit, and they're having sex. And notably, unlike the John from earlier, she's not checking a watch. It looks like she's kind of lost in it, like she's actually getting into the sex. However, when it's done, and he's sitting there, kind of, you know, he feels all awkward. He almost looks a little bit ashamed.
I was gonna say I couldn't tell if they were going for like a basking in the post sort of thing, or if it was him just like, we shouldn't have done that.
Well, and I don't think it's because he's ashamed. Oh, I just had sex with someone who's a call girl. I think it's more like she tried to sort of lure him into sex earlier, and he was able to, like, you know, stand his ground and not give in. But she kind of like, you know, but at the same time, it kind of felt like this was a bit more genuine on her part to some extent. Like she kind of lost herself. However, when he, you know, he's sitting there all kind of like, you know, stoic and sad, she eventually kind of like throws out a lot like some like, but almost like she's realizing that was a bit too intimate, and she has to distance herself from it. And she says, "Oh, are you upset because you didn't make me come? Don't worry, I never come for Johns." And she walks out, and I'm like, you just called him a John, like, which obviously is just like a slap to his, like, you know, not his ego, but his, I don't know, his person. Like he's like that has to hurt.
But again, it goes back to that idea for her where she's like, okay, I'm opening up a bit too much here. And like, I did genuinely enjoy my time with him, so I need to push him away. I need to make him lesser in my own mind, even if it means hurting him.
And it's not really important, right? But I kind of think she's lying. Just based on like how much it felt like she was into it. I mean, maybe she didn't finish. It doesn't really matter if she did or not. But like, it's more just that like this felt like a moment of her like having a genuine romantic moment with someone, and then immediately retreating and kind of like, you know, putting off the walls. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. It 100% felt like she came down there with genuine intentions, or
she
like
came
was
down there
actually scared. Did she? Didn't she? Who knows? I really want to take your sound clip and just cut it out of saying like, it really doesn't matter if she did or didn't. Like, who cares? Like, Pete, the ultimate lover. But no,
I meant in the context of this story. How dare you?
I know. That's why I want to cut it out.
It's always important. It's always important.
But no, I think she went down there. Maybe she was genuinely scared. Maybe she did genuinely care for him or whatever. But it was that moment of opening up, and that's what, you know, when she does the next sequence of basically backsliding and going down into the club pretty soon after this. I think that's because of this as well. The sort of thing where she's like, I can't talk to Klute. I can't be around him because I was already being too genuine, whatever. I have to go back to something before him.
Yeah, she has to go back to someone who doesn't actually care about her, right? Just offers this facade of like a security, a protection, or whatever it is. So, yeah, no, I mean, all that stuff I think is really well done. I think it's one of the stronger scenes in the movie. And it is notable how different it's captured versus just her with the John earlier, particularly the one that we actually see her have sex with, like in the hotel room or whatever. Because, I mean, not only do you have the not checking the watch and it looks like she's actually into it, but like just from like a setting and cinematography, that scene was in broad daylight and the entire attitude was very different, where she's sort of like talking the guy into it because this is what the script is. This felt like a spur of the moment. No, I want to go down, you know, I want to slide down to his mattress and do this thing. It feels like it was very dimly lit. It feels more intimate. It feels like, oh, we're kind of almost witnessing something that we shouldn't be seeing, because it feels like a genuine moment between two people. You know, there's a lot of difference between how they're both captured to really sell those ideas.
Yeah, and I mean, most importantly, I think for her character is she can't really even hide behind the idea that this was like a paid for thing. It's not like she was being compensated for it. Like, this was 100% free. So
yeah, I mean,
something there.
She does try to say like, oh, you broke, you were always going to break. It's almost like, oh no, I just wanted to know I could do it. Like, I could like trick you into it almost. At least that's what she says afterwards, to try and again distance herself from everything. So
we get a quick little scene of Klute talking to the guy who did it. Cable, I think it is.
Yeah.
And then we get more confirmation that Cable is definitely the super bad guy because he's sitting up in his big penthouse office with the big sliding doors and all that. But then when we cut back, it's basically her breakdown where he comes back to her apartment after she's been strung out for a while, and he basically just cares for her while she's coming down from her drug-fueled haze. And you said earlier on that bit where she's talking to her therapist and saying, he's seen me at my worst, he's seen me in all these bad times. This is the worst. This is the point where he's sticking around still caring for her.
It's very economical as well, because that therapy session starts playing over as we're seeing him take care of her, and she's saying, hey, I've met someone who's kind of looking out for me and is like there for me, blah, 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 blah. And like, we see him just kind of sit and watch and making sure she's all right. And she even admits to her therapist that this is maybe someone like this, she's never felt this before. This is like someone with genuine feelings. And as we said, like someone who's seen me at my worst and whatever. And I think it's the next session she has where she does just kind of casually drop that, they're making love. Like that's something they're now doing regularly. He's staying in her apartment. We don't overly emphasize and see a bunch of it. But by the time, they come back and it's been broken into, like at that point they're buying like fruit together. They're having fun. Yeah. They're being flirty outside. Things have progressed.
Honestly, that fruit buying scene, I feel like, especially because it has the narration of the therapy over top of it, it's such a smart way of doing it because it's such a blasé thing. It's something that nobody except for a couple who are comfortable with each other would be doing together. And then specifically the way Jane Fonda's physical performance is here, where she's not actually looking at the fruit. She's not actually doing anything there, but she's just tailing right behind Klute the whole time. Just gives this idea that she is fully opening up to him and is just willing to go along with whatever it is he says at this point.
Yeah, and until something else makes her relapse effectively. Which, because somewhere in around here, because Cable's found out about this prostitute who knows and maybe can identify him, she turns up dead. And, Klute and Bree, are at the crime scene kind of thing, and they know about it. There's a great sequence a little bit after where she's like packing her bags in her apartment, and that's all we see, right? And it's not until like it's been going on for a little bit where the camera just pans over and we see Roy Scheider sitting there, and it's this idea that the movie just revealed to us that she's going to go stay with him for protection. And Klute comes into this, and it really feels like this just unbelievably awkward, like it's not even a love triangle because Roy Scheider's not in love with her by any stretch, but like this idea that she's making this choice to go back to him, and he's kind of starting to beg her not to and say, hey, don't do this for this reason, that. And Roy Scheider, the smarmy way he kind of comes in and says, hey, I respect you, Bree respects you, like you have to respect her too. And he's like, respect her decisions. And Klute's been so composed the whole movie. She's trying to like flirt with him into like just having sex to get rid of him, as if that will achieve that. He keeps his guard up. He's been so composed the whole movie, and then right here, like he just unleashes and punches Roy Scheider and punches him a couple of times and like throws him out of the apartment. And she has a very interesting reaction to this, where she grabs a pair of scissors and like kind of like swipes him or like stabs at his arm or whatever. And there's this moment like after she does it where he's obviously hurt and shocked that she's like kind of defending the other guy, and she almost like I think like catches herself in the moment of like, wait, what the F did I just do? Like why have I just done this? And to the point where she actually goes to her therapist's office, like, I need therapy right now. I tried to kill someone, the one person I kind of actually really care about. I tried to kill him. Yeah. And the therapist just isn't there.
Yeah, but again, it really comes back to that idea of she so deeply wants to push away good things before they can hurt her. And the fact that this was literally a physical representation of the good life she could lead if she decides to open up with Klute, and the life that she's comfortable with and is okay with staying in. And Klute is literally pushing out that bad stuff and is getting rid of it physically. And so her wanting to get rid of that, it just as a immediate instinctual response makes a whole lot of sense for her character.
Yeah, and somewhere around here as well, like, I mean, this is sprinkled throughout the movie, and there's actually a really nice little scene that I like where Klute is on the phone talking to someone about the case, maybe the policeman or whatever. And he's basically like taking notes, and he sort of scored out the 2 prostitutes that are now dead, and it basically has Bree's name next, and it's like, oh shit, she's up next on the list. But it also puts like, oh, and then he puts down the name of the missing guy with a question mark, saying whoever's killed them probably killed him too. So he's sort of like putting these things together, and the way that he ultimately figures out who it is because they have the typewriting analyzed, and it's like, hey, whoever did this tried to frame this guy so they know him. So everyone who knows him, check, he has the policeman check all their like typewriting like sort of styles and spacing and whatnot, and the typos that he makes. And so they actually get to a conclusion where like, hey, this is Cable's typewriter, and it's how he types, like the mistakes he makes. Which, funny enough, that whole thing where he swaps 2 letters, I do that all the time, but not just with like one word. Like I do it with tons of words.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guarantee you, if I were to ever be caught on something like that, it's because of spelling the word received. I don't think I've ever once spelled that word correctly. But no, I do like that sequence in that it makes it clear that Klute now knows. And while it does feel, I think, if you look at it just written down, a little bit cheap on the idea that, oh, they just did essentially the equivalent of some handwriting analysis. It wasn't actually the clues that led there. It was just, oh, we just found it on this. I do think that the idea to begin looking for that area, to be looking for someone else in the company, was all because of Klute's investigation stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think at this point, to me, it's just clear the movie's less concerned with having a mystery with like a whodunit, and it's more concerned with the danger that he presents to the characters we now care about. And kind of like, is Bree going to like evolve and like make a better choice by the, because this is where she tries to go to the old man and there's just money left for her.
Yeah.
And she ends up at this sewing like company after.
Yeah, it's like a fabric thing.
Yeah, after dark. And this is when the killer comes to her and like, basically,
right.
Not only does he like, is it clear who it is? And there's a whole creepy thing here where he's standing behind like the plastic with the mannequins and all that. And, but he plays a tape for her, and I was expecting it to be the tape that he recorded of her that he's been listening to the whole movie, but it turns out to be like the prostitute that he just killed, the junkie one that he murdered. He recorded that on tape, like audio of it, so she has to sit and listen to that.
Well, it's also the whole reason that he's here is that Klute actually did set a trap at this point.
He tried to, at least, anyway.
Yeah. Much earlier on in the movie, he went and investigated the first girl who was murdered, and she still had some belongings that were in like a police evidence locker, and it was nothing. It was absolutely nothing of consequence. But when they found out it was Cable, he went and told Cable, oh yeah, turns out she had a book of names, and I found the person who has it. I'm going to buy it off of them, and it'll have the name of whoever committed this crime in it. So now he's basically trying to get to Bree specifically because he thinks that she has the book and is going to buy it off of her and probably kill her.
Yeah. Oh, it's very clear he's going to kill her. Like, he's basically insinuating that throughout a lot of the scene. So yeah, it's a lot of him, being creepy and talking to her, and her sitting there and the tear going down her eyes. And all of this is shot like they're almost in silhouette, not quite, but almost in silhouette throughout a lot of this scene.
I love the sequence where he starts playing the tape of the woman being killed, because it's so unsettling to just hang on Jane Fonda's face that whole time. And especially like the entire thing is basically the girl in the tape knows that something is wrong. She's trying to weasel out of it. She's trying to get out of it. She can. Cable's not letting her. And then, like, on a dime, just suddenly in the middle, she just lets out this blood-curdling scream. Like she's absolutely being killed on tape at that point. And you get to see, I don't know if Jane Fonda heard the tape before that take, but, like, she seems genuinely startled by it when it happens and genuinely broken down as she hears her friend dying on tape. So
there's a very good chance that on set, the tape wasn't there. And so they just had like the director or maybe like an assistant just saying what the dialogue was for her to react to. There's a good chance that's how it was done.
And as soon as it came to the screen bit, they just popped the paper back.
No, I mean, I think it's really unsettling hearing him like be very calm on the tape and say, hey, I'm not going to hurt you, and I'm going to drive you back after. But the whole time he's going to hurt her and she's getting scared. Like it is very unsettling the whole time.
Yeah. Also, just to make clear, the whole reason that he killed the guy was because the guy caught him with the dead call girl. and he knew that it would be used against him at work at some point, so he had to take the other guy out.
Yeah, if not, like maybe because the whole thing is that at the start of the movie is like, oh, your husband might not have been a nice guy, but it sounds like, you know, he didn't do anything wrong. I mean, maybe if he was like keeping on to this, like you murdered a hooker for like leverage, that would be like a crappy thing to do. So that's clearly what this bad guy thought. It's also possible maybe he was just going to, I don't know, report that someone killed someone else.
I was gonna say, it strikes me that he may have eventually called the cops. It does give a good time period of how long it took between seeing this and when it ended up being this guy died. But it strikes me that he would have done the right thing and not be weird blackmailing for a job or anything like that.
Yeah, poor guy's reputation with his wife was just completely obliterated for a while there. I mean, I'm sure Klute's going to fill her in and say, hey, your husband wasn't a bad guy after all, but yeah, for a little bit. So Klute, you know, he's looking for, he eventually comes to this location, which I assume he maybe got maybe from the therapist office or something, like maybe.
Well, he remember he recorded her at the beginning. That's right, going to this guy's place. True. So theoretically, probably would have had the address at that point.
Yeah, but you know, he decides to come here and Cable, when he sees, because he's about to try and kill her, he's sort of like reaching for her neck and stuff at this point. When he sees Klute, he basically just decides to like back away and dive out the window. Which, if I'm honest, this going through the window shot is like maybe like one of the like, oh, this doesn't really hold up. Like, they didn't really quite have the right set or the, you know, just to make it look good. It looks a little bit hokey, this going through the window moment.
For me, it feels like a lack of coverage more than anything, or maybe they had a very specific thing in mind and it just wasn't working. But it's a shot of Klute kind of like running into the office. He's not even at the office yet. Then it's a shot of Cable looking up, and then it goes to a shot of Cable just running out the window. And I feel like there's two shots in the middle there between him looking up and running out the window that just needed to be there. Yeah. I don't know what it would be, but they were missing something.
At the very, it feels like he turns around in a way that feels unnatural, because it looks like he's like backing away and then he's running head first to the window. And
right.
It feels a bit awkward in the edit, and I think it's just a case of like they only had one good like chance to get their. They got one big fake window, you know. They're just going to do it in silhouette kind of thing. We can only do it once for, you know, whatever reason, and this is the take they got, and they just had to kind of like work around it or something. But
there's probably a stunt guy as well, so like they had to do what they could.
It's the only thing in the whole movie where it feels like, oh, they had to settle on this, as opposed to everything else that feels so deliberate and so thought out in the cinematography. This feels like this is just the best they had, and then they had to just go with it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the end of the movie, she's at therapy again, and she's saying things like, oh, I don't know if I can let myself into, you know, someone romantically and be with them like a normal, like, you know, like housewife type character or whatever it would be. I don't think I can.
She's literally saying like, me and him are so different. Yeah. There's nothing we could possibly live on. She's
also saying she can't leave the city or whatever. But as she's saying this, we cut to her place and she's packing up with Klute, and they're clearly leaving together and going off somewhere. And the final moment of the movie, after the narration from the therapy's ended, is the phone rings. A John, presumably like she gets these calls, and she picks up, she answers, and she's pleasant, but says, oh no, she's leaving town and she won't be back, and she hangs up and leaves with Klute, and that's when the credits start to roll. So it feels like that final moment's like her making her choice. Like, no, she's going somewhere, maybe back to Pennsylvania with him where he normally lives, I assume, or wherever. Maybe they're going somewhere new together. Who knows? But it feels like, you know, she's made this choice, she's grown, she's finally accepted like a real relationship and whatnot. So, yeah.
No, I think ending on the shot of the empty apartment is a very clever way of saying, okay, we've left all that behind. It's that was the previous life and we're moving on to a new chapter. So I if it wasn't for that one shot, I think that the entire like third act climax here, everything of her getting caught by this guy up until the ending, was pretty much pitch perfect. I don't have a bad thing to say about any of that. It's just that one shot that's like, it could have been better.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, very strong character arc. Like, it's hard to really find faults in how they handle her story and like how they handle, you know, like every time Roy Scheider's face appears, it feels like she's receding into this old life, and she's like, you know, she's gone off the wagon, as it were. And And you do feel really kind of bad when she shows back up at her place afterwards and she's kind of like tipsy and clearly on something. And it's like, oh, it's actually sweet that Donald Sutherland's character still wanting to take care of her, who's making sure she's okay. And it's this idea that he's going to stick around no matter what, even though he has seen her at her worst. Because I think when she's in therapy, she phrases it as, he still wants me and desires me, even though he's seen me ugly, he's seen me at my worst and at my saddest. But I think the real sort of like more important part is that he's still there for her to help and to be there and to be a person she can rely on, regardless of how many times he's seen her quote unquote ugly, quote unquote like at her worst. So it's a really strong story, really strong character arc, and the villain's solid enough, and I do think there's some creepy vibes throughout, but it's definitely not the strong element of the movie. The character arc is the movie. That is what makes it all work and makes it feel like a special performance and story.
Yeah, I don't think I would put the villain himself, like the actor playing the character, as anything too incredibly special. I think more so of what the villain represents over the course of the story.
Sure.
And sort of like the menace of it always just kind of being lurking in the background, which is kind of why I felt a little bit disappointed when we did get the reveal. I think that the menace of he could be anywhere, he could be anyone, and especially when we thought this could still be the guy that we're looking for as well. It just leads you down a whole bunch of possibilities that immediately get nipped as soon as we just know it's this guy, and we'll be able to spot him whenever he shows up.
To play devil's advocate, I actually think there's maybe a reason why they chose to reveal him early, and I think it's because they knew it wasn't that impressive a reveal. So by doing it early, you're like, if they'd waited till the very end and like him like coming out to speak to her was the reveal of who it is, and then he explains, oh, he caught me with this dead hooker, and then I had to take care of him. It would have maybe been like a lot of explanation right after we found out it was him. It would feel a little bit like, okay, we're quickly having to explain all this. I think by revealing him much earlier, it means by the time we get to the third act, we're just enjoying the threat of him as opposed to caring about, why he's doing what he's doing and how it all played out with the characters in the backstory. So I think there's a reason for it.
No, I agree that I think that it should have been revealed before the third act happened. But the thing is, there's two sequences where we see him listening to the tape. The first one is just kind of independently on his own, and the second one is just after Klute shows up. I think if we had kept the second one but didn't include the first, that would have been the best point to do the reveal, because it's showing here's how he got this information that then leads into why he's doing what he does in the third act. We don't have to second guess that sort of stuff. And it also works out because that's about the point where Klute also says, yeah, I'm willing to bet that our guy's probably dead. Like, I don't think he's the one doing this, and he's probably dead at this point.
And it's right after Klute's given him some information, so it would maybe hit you with a gut punch of, oh, he knows like stuff about like how Klute's sniffing him out, and like it can do something about it. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe they should have saved it for the second time you listen to the tape. But ultimately, it doesn't affect things too much because the strengths of the movie are other things. And it's its themes are pretty rich. It's a very this is a very layered and in-depth lead female character. In a role that I think sadly, I think even today it feels that these aren't common enough, but certainly in 1971, I imagine this felt quite like a big deal, having a role like this, which was this gritty and talking about sex. Because at one point, when she's doing the flirty stuff with Klute early on, she basically starts trying to guess what he's into, and she starts just listing fetishes. Oh, maybe you want me to walk around on you in high heels. Maybe you want to, watch me piss or something. She says all these things, and it feels like, whoa, I don't think I've ever heard a movie this old just start listing categories from Pornhub. This is weird.
Well, I do think that that's kind of why the movie is named Klute, and why, if you look at the poster, you have Donald Sutherland off to the right, or off to the left, but then you have Jane Fonda specifically during that bit where her dress is mostly unzipped. I think that the marketing was kind of pushing for this idea of, yeah, you've got the hard-boiled detective and the femme fatale. You have he's going to be the focus. He's the one who the movie's name is, and she's just there as the causing trouble in the background character. But then you get into the movie and it's something entirely different. But I do agree that I think it's kind of a sign of the times where this was not something that was common, and you kind of had to convince people no, there's something strong here going on.
Yeah, because I wouldn't call her femme fatale. She's way more,
right.
layered than that. But like, yeah, that's maybe
but the
how
marketing is pushing for that.
Yeah, no, I can see it. David, what are you rating Klute out of 10?
Honestly, like, it's weird. I said at the beginning of this that I was expecting this one to be more of a all-timer. I was expecting this one to be up there with, like, Rocky and stuff like that, just because I had always seen it around. It's always been on the periphery in like different lists and stuff like that. And having actually seen it, it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like an all-timer, but it is still a very well-made film. It's got a lot going for it, and
to be fair, I don't think it doesn't get mentioned in the same breath as a Rocky or a Jaws or anything else from the 70s that is always brought up.
Yeah, but like it's always been on the periphery for me, where I was just, maybe that's my own personal stuff being brought into it, where I just kind of thought it would be. Because it's always been on the background, I expected it to be one of those things that snuck under my radar and I actually really, really loved. And I do really, really like this movie. It's one of those ones that looking back on, like, there was a series that came out on Netflix called, I'm going to blank on it now, Grace and Frankie, I believe. And that was a Netflix series that Jane Fonda was in that was absolutely like, here's a bunch of older actresses and actors that just want a payday, and this is not a series that is going to put them through the ringer too much. Like, it's a very easygoing series. And watching that with my fiance, I was like, all right, well, I don't really see what the big deal here is. But having gone back, seeing Jane Fonda in this, I'm like, okay, I get it. I understand now why Jane Fonda is like such a fantastic actress and for her time and whatnot. So I think overall, all that said, I'm going to give this one a solid 8.
Sure.
It's close to that 8.5 mark for me, but I think that I would need this movie to have nailed that thriller mystery that it introduced in the beginning for me to say that like the tone was proper the whole way through, but the character stuff easily gets it to the 8 just on its own.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go that 1.5 higher and say 8.5. I think it nails the character arc so well. And she's such a compelling character with layers, and it feels like a very nuanced look at the type of character she is, that it's hard to really fault the movie for it's almost like a fun misdirect where you go in thinking it's just going to be a thriller, and then it's like, no, it's actually this other thing, but like that other thing's really good, so you shouldn't be that mad. Right. So I think there's a lot in here, and I'm glad I finally watched it. I think it's starting off our 70s thriller season on a good footing. Mm-hmm. And I guess we have to decide if it's making the cut, which I think it is, clearly.
Yeah, I don't think that's really a question here. I'd be surprised if anything here gets to a cut above, but I do think we're going to have a lot of making the cuts.
Hey, you don't know if we're going to be, because I mean, I've not seen most of the movies we're going to do.
No, same. I'm just saying, just from that sort of vague reputation, like coming up next, we got French Connection. It's in that exact same boat as Klute, where it's always just been on the periphery for me, and I've always wanted to.
No, French Connection's a bigger name. Like, okay. Yeah, French Connection is brought up as one of the biggies. So, and I'm not saying that I'm going to feel that way, and I have seen it before. But it's definitely a name that is brought up. It's maybe the biggest name we're doing for this season. I would say.
Fair enough.
So
same year, also starring Roy Scheider.
Yes, that is true. And one of the movies that we're not doing this season, but we will in a future 70s thriller season, is Marathon Man, which Roy Scheider is also in. So yeah, he was definitely a very prolific actor in the 70s. He was getting around.
No kidding.
Because Jaws was also the 70s. Like 70s was his decade, man. He was doing tons of stuff. So yeah, as you said, next up is The French Connection next week, and we're now in the era of not taking weeks off. Things got a little bit wonky because I was sick for a bit, which kind of moved things around. So last week there was the public extra reels, but going forward, there'll be a collector's cut every week. There'll be an atomic cinema experiment every week. The only thing that might happen once in a while is that they might swap days if there's like a big new release we want to get out early on collector's cut. But other than that, there'll be one every week. So yeah, so French Connection is coming up next. And of course, as I was saying earlier, you can support the show and help keep it coming if you like it and you want to have it in your life for forever, potentially. You can go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us there, or support us via YouTube membership. Both are valid choices, and you can get access to things like Extra Reels, which is a monthly show we do where we do some of the worst movies of all time. We get miserable. It's a hoot, kinda. So you can go check out that. We have the bonus ratings rundown segment for both Collector's Cut and Ace, where we do all the extra categories and things like that. So
just to put out there real quick, for anyone who wants to see what their money would be worth on Extra Reels, we did just put out the public episode.
Yes, last week, yeah.
Of Get Even.
So you can check out Get Even for free on YouTube. But yeah, go check out that, and obviously there's bonuses for Screams After Midnight and the other shows we do. So thank you to everyone who already supports us, and that'll bring an end to this week's show. So this is the start of 70s thriller season. We got 6 more movies coming over the next month and a half, so look forward to all of those. And enjoy the quality cinema while we can, because after that's Mortal Kombat season, and I've got a feeling the average ratings are going to plummet once we hit there.
I would pivot exactly what you said. I would say enjoy while you get while we can, because we're going to be blowing it out of the water.
With Johnny Cage and Liu Kang and Sub-Zero. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone, that's us. Thank you very much for joining. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.